So I had this new missionary. I'm gonna call him out. His name's Alex. Uh, his name's Alex. And it was our first transfer together. It was actually our first baptism together. And it was this referral, this part member family. She was going to get baptized. They later got sealed. So that was a beautiful sealing. So she got baptized, and my companion was going to baptize her. So they were standing in the font. And he had told me many times, like, yeah, we practice the baptismal prayer in the MTC. I'm a pro. And I was like, okay, elder, that's good. I believe you. So I wanted to show him some trust. And he was such a capable elder, so there was no reason for me to doubt him, except for this. So he was standing in the baptismal font, and he raises his arm to the square, and he says the prayer perfectly, and puts her in the water and takes her out. And I was like, Elder, that was great. Just say her name now. Just say her name this time. He had completely forgotten to say her name. Just because in the MTC you don't practice names. You just practice a prayer. So it was a very funny experience, and I still laugh about it with him today. So just be aware that say the name. You practice it in the MTC, and that's great, but just don't forget to say that name. That's a key part of the ordinance. I remember one time we were running late, and our mission president, depending on like mission presidents, they'll emphasize more rules than other rules. That's to say that all rules aren't created equal. So my mission president he would really tell us to like be at home before 9. So the manual says 9, or maybe if you're in a lesson 9:30, but my mission president was like, no, be home by 9. It could be dangerous to be out that late. So I remember we were running back home. We were late, or we were about to be late because we were far from home. So we were running back, and it was dark, and we ran into a recent convert. I love this recent convert. Her name was Luce. She was a 64-year-old lady. But just to clarify, like now you see like 64-year-old ladies, and they're like strong, moving around. She, just because of her, like, she'd been working a long time. She had a bad hip, had a bad leg. So she seemed older than 64 to be quite honest. But we saw her late in the middle of nowhere and just roaming the streets. And we stopped, of course, and we're like, hey, Liz, what's going on? Are you okay? And she was like, yeah, I'm just waiting for the colectivo. Colectivo is like a little van that you hop in, and it's like a bus, but they're small little vans to be more economic. And she was like, I'm waiting for the colectivo to take me to the gas station. I'm like, why in the world do you want to go to the gas station now? It's super late. And it was Saturday night, and she said, because I got my check in the mail today, and I need to go change it in so I can pay tithing tomorrow. And when she said that, I was like, boom, it just kind of hit a chord with me, because she's this really old lady, obviously not well prepared to be roaming around late at night. Anything could happen. Yet she was so committed to keeping those commandments that I was privileged to have taught her. And it just kind of hit me, and I was like, and like, it was just a testimony builder. I feel like many times it's not really us. So yeah, we teach the gospel, we teach the concepts of the gospel, but honestly, like, we're the ones gaining a lot more. So whenever I think, so even nowadays, being back a couple of years, I still think like, oh, I could just pay my tithing next week. I haven't cashed in this check or whatever. And I always think of her, and I'm like, no, if she can do it, I can do it. Because I think obedience does have to do with timing as well. It's not just about doing it. I feel like the time also proves your obedience. So I loved her. She was great. And actually, speaking about her baptism was actually very unique, because she had a bad hip. She couldn't really like duck backwards. So she really wanted me to do it. I feel like she just was like super nervous about this baptism, just like incredibly nervous. So when we were in the water, I could just tell she was really anxious, and I was like, "Are you okay?" And she was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And the first time, and I feel really guilty for this. I feel really bad. So the first time, just because she was so nervous, she like was really stiff. So when I put her in, I didn't put her in the whole way. I think her hand like stuck out, and I pushed her back up because she was like squirming, and I pulled her back out of the water. And I was like, "Luz, we have to do this again." And she looked at me. She was like, "Oh no!" And I felt so bad. And I was like, "Yes." But I can tell like her anxiety levels were like rising. So before she was like freaking out, and like before she could even think about it, I had already finished the prayer and I was already putting her back in the water, just so she wouldn't think about it. And when I pushed her out, I was like, "Okay, you're good," and she was so happy that it was over with. So yeah, I just thought that was a really funny baptism.